There's Mia. Hi, Mia.
Hey,
I'm so happy to have you. Uh,
happy to be here.
Mia is somebody as you know from her intro, I'm very familiar with her. I think you have such an incredible story, and you're just funny and cute,
Thank
adorable.
you.
I love your hair.
Thank
That's
you.
like a plug for the YouTube channel.
There we go.
So, how long you've been sober? Um, I have your husband who's going to be on probably tomorrow, the day after your podcast airs. But he's been sober a long time, and you've been
Yeah.
sober longer than he has. So what are we at now?
I celebrated 32 years in January. Yeah, without a drink. And it's
Holy
my
shit.
third sobriety, so that's this time. Yeah. So I'm really grateful. Yeah, it's weird though. It's weird because I still feel like I'm in my 30s, so I don't get it. You know what I mean? I really do. It's like makes me, yeah, I almost can't connect with it, but it has been that long.
Well, you look like you're in your 30s. You look young and cute. And
Thank you.
how do you do it? What's your secret? But I know some of your stories from like the end days. But take me back. Your childhood is so interesting to me. Tell me a little bit about you, Mia, growing up as a kid.
Sure. So I did grow up in this very interesting family. My dad was a professional musician, and I grew up in Seattle. And I have five older brothers, and they were all in the arts except for the oldest one, who was like in banking. So he was the black sheep, the one that went to college, got a degree, and had a family and did all that stuff. So the rest of them are all kind of, chefs and, artists and dancers and actors and all that. And my brother, the musician, was a drummer, and so was my dad. And so there's a lot of music and a lot of parties that we either had or went to. So I grew up in a very adult environment, and lots and lots of drinking. I started sneaking cigarettes when I was like 6, 7 years old. I would was such a good little thief, and they would leave their packs out, and I knew how to slide up and literally pull one out without them knowing, and then I'd go stand in the alley or go find somewhere that I could smoke it. And that's like 7, 8, like really young.
It's like you were in Oliver, part of
Yeah.
like a little pickpocketing gang.
Oh yeah, yeah, totally. It did. And it was I don't even know where I learned it. I'd steal change if they left it out. It was like always trying to feed some sort of habit. So so that's part of it. And then the drinking. So my mom always, I grew up in this, I was little in this late 60s, early 70s. So mom always had a wine carafe with little glasses in the living room, white wine that just always sat out. And so it was really easy access. And I think when you grow up around people having a good time, you want to be a part of it. And that's really where I was coming from. It was like I want to be part of the party. I want to be like a grown up. I felt like it would, there weren't always a lot of kids around. There were good and bad things about that, but I do have a lot of fond memories of it. I'd get up and sing with my dad, and all that kind of stuff. But I was sipping booze from a very early age, and really my first drunk, I was 5, and my mom was having a dinner party, and this was when we still lived in a house, and they were in the dining room, and me and the one little girl that came with one of my mom's dad's friends that was a musician, her and I were in the living room playing records. And when they found us, we were both naked, we were playing records, and I one of us peed on the floor, and it was wackadoo. And so the memory I have of my parents telling, and like I can remember this, but my parents said that what they did was they just kept me awake because they were afraid. I actually went to the top of the stairs and like rolled down the stairs because my bedroom was at the top of the stairs. So I was giggly. Like I had a little party with my friend at 5, but they were afraid if I fell asleep, I might not wake up. So like that's the serious side of it. So it's like that really was my first where I took it too far,
And that was your
from the
first
very beginning.
sobriety. You quit drinking. You
Yes, yeah, I quit drinking. I held out till I was like 11, 12, as long as I could. And yeah. So, yeah, I mean it was like that just paints that picture of sort of people weren't really paying attention. The grown-ups were doing their own thing, and there was a lot of loud music, and so it was really easy to get away with shit, you know, and I
My
did.
parents were I grew up also little girl in the late 60s. I was born in 66. Don't do the math,
64.
people.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, and early 70s, lots of parties. My parents were like hippies, lots of music. Yeah, I do kind of glorify those days. I also remember like sitting on stairs and like wanting to be a part of things.
Oh yeah. A little bit like that, Sound of Music meets the Partridge Family, in terms of like the just yeah, really wanting to be with everyone. And the truth is a lot of the time they really treated me that way. I mean, I have a picture of myself as like a 3-year-old with big headphones on. And I remember that musician brother was always making me listen to music and learn songs and, was having me listen to Joni Mitchell when I was a little kid or Carol King or whatever. I mean, those are the records I would memorize, when I was little. So all of that, I think, played into the whole fantasy of, you know, the good time that you
Right.
can have drinking and drugging. And there was lots of pot, smoke. There was all kinds of stuff going on. I felt like we had a Laurel Canyon vibe in Seattle on Capitol Hill going on in my house for sure.
Right. But now things got dark kind of
Hmm.
quick for you. What was the turn?
Yeah,
What was the turn? Like, because then you must have started drinking again kind of young, and then that went south.
it did. So kind of fast forwarding, at 16, when I was 16, on the 4th of July, my brother Kim committed suicide here in Los Angeles. We were in Seattle. We think had struggled. I'm thinking even now that there may have even been some Asperger's or spectrum stuff going on with him. There's a lot of stuff that you can see, but I do think he was bipolar, untreated, and an incredible musician. But all the stories from my parents, even when he was younger, he'd say it hurt when he would get his hair cut. Like there's just so many things that sort of indicate his balance chemistry was off. So he took his life. It was kind of a devastating experience for my family. There was a lot of other, that summer of 1980 was filled with a lot of craziness in my family. There's other things that were pretty dark that happened after that that were, um, you know, just real painful to deal with. And so I was that prior to that 4th of July, I was this very popular girl in high school. I was a cheerleader. I was in the stage band. I was in the choir. I was doing all kinds of stuff. I'd had a pretty good year. That happened. The first thing that I did was go to bed. Like I couldn't get out of bed. So I didn't have access to, I mean, I really didn't think too much about trying to get drugs and alcohol. I was trying to just disappear a little bit, from the heaviness in my house. So I slept a lot. And as a result, when school started that year, I couldn't get up for school. My friend who would always come pick me up to go to the bus would find me asleep. And by November, I dropped out. And I never thought I'd be a high school dropout, ever. I mean, that was not on my bingo card at all. And that's when my parents were like, they just said, if you're not going to go to school, you have to work. You have to get a job. And so I got a job. And that's when I started partying. And
What was the job?
I worked at a t-shirt shop in the University District. So I silk screen t-shirts and um, it was, it's what's really interesting is the woman that I essentially spent my day with that I worked for was a horrendous alcoholic. She would leave me there. She'd go down to the bar that was downstairs and she would by the end of the day, she would be so slurring her words. She had no idea what was going on. So it was a really interesting environment to work in. And I was, partying with my friends that were still in school and I think I already felt like an outsider and kind of strange. Like I wanted to be a part of. There's that thing again. I want to be a part of these were my friends too, but I wasn't in school anymore. I was pretty lost for that, 16 to whew, the first sobriety that I tried to do. I kind of got introduced 17, 18 to a bunch of friends that lived in like the sober house on Capitol Hill. And it was they kind of partied and danced and did all the shit, but they didn't do drugs or drink. They were all actually said they were alcoholics and didn't drink. So they were like, we'd stay up all night playing Uno. There was people fucking around. There was all kinds of stuff going on. So it was still crazy behavior, but so I would spend weekends there, and then I'd go drop acid and sleep around the next weekend. And then I'd come back to the sober house, and then I'd go, do whatever. I was literally all over the place, and that
Did
was what my teens looked like.
did you have any feeling of like, oh my gosh, it's so great that you're sober, but also kind of sucks for you because I don't have a problem, so I can like go
Oh
do my
yeah.
thing, but you guys are fun.
Yeah, exactly. It's like it's fun hanging out here. It's kind of like a trip where it's like they all kind of have their own rooms, and their parents weren't there. They were teenagers like I was. So I felt like I don't know if identify, but it's like I really felt lost. My parents were so wrecked after the suicide. They didn't know where I was. They didn't necessarily, I spent most of my time with this friend in this house. I would sleep over for weeks, and I'd go home for a couple days. And I had a job and I had a car. So it was like, but I was 17. I was really young, but I liked hanging there because they were kind of rough around the edges, obviously, because some of them had been like really screwed up, but I also felt like I could, walk out the door and literally go down the street and go to a party and get high, and it's really interesting to sort of be in these different groups and still always kind of feel a little bit like you don't fit, but I could always, the persona thing would help, and you would just sort of put on to get along, like
Right.
I never really enjoyed all the crap that came with promiscuity, if you will, and screwing around. I'd go to frat parties at 17 with all my friends, and all kinds of shit would go down, in that. And, I can't say I really like that. That made me feel good about myself. But, while leading up to it was always a lot of fun, to kind of go and party and drink beer and do all that stuff. But then the next day, so I can't say, oh, I love myself.
Right. Right.
This is fun. But,
But then things got
it's,
even darker.
yeah, I in the let's see around I had a real interesting experience. So I had my first year, I've actually got a year without drinking. And around that same time, so this would be 3 years after my brother died, my father died, and I started a new job at a big truck company in Seattle, and it was a really good paying job. I met a guy there. I wasn't looking for one. I worked in a factory with all these union workers, and I was one of the only three females with hundreds and hundreds of men. And they were all union workers, and I was non-union because I just had a job that I was recording numbers, and I'd walk around the every day. And I ended up the only guy that was nice to me turns out to be a married guy who introduced me to crack cocaine. So, good times. Now I'm 19. I'm working at this company, and I'm, spending my time with, I, it was like I was just in such a fog by that point. I really did. My dad died on a Friday, and I started that job on a Monday. So it was
Wow.
like again, trying to just anti-Mia medication is what I call it. Whatever worked is sort of like, I don't like this reality. So what else is happening? And he would light up when I would come into his department, whereas the hostility that I would get throughout that whole area. And I have to say that I would find out, all these documentaries on true crime that are really popular now. And here I am watching one on Gary Ridgway, the Green River Killer, and the math is mathing, and it's like, holy shit, I worked with this guy that whole time that I was, we would get high on our lunch break and come back to work, and I worked with the Green River Killer. It's like we worked there at the same time.
That's
It's
so
like
insane. Do you remember him?
it gives me chills. Yeah, I used to walk through his area every day. And it was like, and he was quiet. And I'm telling you, everybody was pretty hostile to me. Nobody wanted to help me. Sometimes it was really hard to get the numbers off these truck parts because they're ginormous. And everyone chill me out, and he was no different. But the one guy that in that one department was very kind. But I, at the
What if
time,
he
I
was
didn't know
nice
it.
to you though, and then you were like, well,
Oh,
he was
hell.
always, I know he killed a lot of people, but he was always
Yeah.
really nice to me.
Well, and I just think, Jesus, I was putting myself here. Everyone knew this guy I was screwing around with was married. I was not making friends and influencing people or whatever. You know what I mean? I wasn't popular already. And and I'm 19 at this point. And what does he do when he leaves work? Goes in and cruises the strip and picks up prostitutes and kills them. And my bottom, that first bottom, this was my second sobriety, after a couple years of crack cocaine and doing this stuff with this dude that I met. I lost that job, by the way, after a year and ended up pretty screwed up. But um, was that he kept trying to convince me almost from the very beginning that we could do a scam where we would like go to a club on the military base in like Fort Lewis, and I would saddle up to some, veteran or whatever, army guy, and have him buy me drinks and all that, and be willing to go back to a room. And then, I keep wanting to say his name. Let's call him Buster. He would bust in, and we'd rob him, and we'd knock the guy out. All these schemes. Like, so he kept trying to sell me on doing that. It would be a way to make money so we could do more crack. And I was like, I ain't doing that shit. I'm not a flirt. I don't know how to do any, like, I knew, like, as screwed up as I am, I'm not cut out to do this. So I put him off and put him off. And then it started, like, I lost my second job. I came home from losing that job with a 3-day notice to move on my apartment. I had nothing left. I didn't know what to do and where to go. No high school education. This job that I'd had that actually paid well at the truck company. I was now really low. And I was starting to consider his offer, which is essentially prostitution. So that was really a big part of my bottom, was just like, I didn't know what else to do. So it was like, I guess let's give it a shot. And luckily, an incredibly horrible last night of using. By then, I'd ended up living back in my mother's basement. Um, it was so bad that last time, at least with the crack, that I just knew that I needed help, and I went upstairs and I couldn't even speak. I'd been on a binge for so long, I had no like vocal cords left. So my mom kept, what is it? What is it? Like, she thought that this guy had beat me up. Did he beat you? Are you pregnant? And I'm like, no, no, like shaking and crying. She goes, is it drugs? And I just started bawling. And it was like, I ended up in treatment the next day. So that was my first treatment center. It was a 28-day treatment center. And I would stay sober for 5.5 years in that period. And after about 2 years in Seattle, I moved to New York. And so it was New York and Dry Town for the next 3.5 years. And that was my period of like being, again, I want so much to be a New Yorker. I want to be an actor. I want to be here. I want to leave all that behind. And
How did you, I mean, so how old are you at this point? Are you like 20?
23.
Oh, you're
I'm
23.
23.
So you were
By now I'm
19 at
20.
the truck company.
Yep.
So
2 years
four
into the
years
rehab.
elapsed during this time.
4 years elapsed. I actually got a good life going once I got out of treatment and had gotten out of the life of, I didn't see this guy again um, until a couple years later, and then I did, and that was a whole other thing. But I didn't see him, and I got a good job, and I was really, really lucky. Those people that I met in that house, those teenagers. One of them by then was always a little bit older than us. She now worked at this really wonderful place that I had applied to work, and this is also really interesting. So she saw my resume. She worked in HR. She had to do my references, and one of the references I had on my resume gave me a bad reference. And
Oh my
she knew
God.
me. Yeah, because I had made an amends to her. And because I took care of her kids, it didn't land well. I made it amends, but it was like, oh my God, a drug addict took care of my kids. What the fuck? She had no idea, right? So she wasn't, and I also worked for her. She had a little newspaper. I worked for her on that, and I was her babysitter. And so I didn't know she was, going, whatever. Well, that girl called me and said she knew me, and she knew that I just got, sober and was out of treatment. And she said, I'm going to suggest you take this off your resume, and I'm going to forget that I had that reference check because I think and I got the job.
Wow, that was really kind.
Oh my God, it was so kind. And the woman the job I was applying for and the woman I would end up working for, she didn't tell me and I didn't know until I'd been there a while, was also had been sober for 10 years. So like, I don't have like any religion but I do kind of go, it's kind of spooky. It's like, if you don't believe in God, you'll believe in spooky. It was a little weird, kind of to like end up and go, wow. So like this sober person helped me get past the shit that would help me get a really good job. Like that job was again, I'm going to go back to, I have a college degree now, but I got that much later. I got that in my 30s. So to be able to get a job that would help me earn a living and given all this destruction that had happened, was really remarkable. And I thank her for that and being able to have a sober boss for a couple of years. But my dream was to go to New York. I really wanted to be on Broadway. I wanted to be the next Bette Midler. That was always never felt terribly confident in myself, but I thought there's room for another Bette Midler. And so I $2,000, two suitcases. They were laying off a bunch of people at that great job, and I would have kept my job. And the other assistant that worked in that group would have lost her job, and she loved it. And I was able to tell my boss, keep her job and let me go. Because I want to leave Seattle. I want out of here. So that's what happened. And it was great because I had a little unemployment. So it helped me kind of facilitate getting, and 3 months later I was in New York and I was there for 10 years. So
So, okay, so at this point you're a few years sober because this is
yep,
going to time out in New
yep,
York.
yep. Spent time out in New York. And so, yeah, I get to New York. I went to a few meetings, 12-step meetings. Didn't like that I didn't know anybody, didn't feel comfortable. Um, Things were
I
going
went to a
well.
12-step meeting in New York when I was there to do like a show or something. And I was
Hmm.
like, I'm going to go to a meeting in New York. Those people do have an edge to them.
Oh my gosh. And my first meeting I went to was at a veterans hospital.
Oh,
Real edge on the Lower East Side. I was like,
yeah.
I'm not in Kansas anymore, kind of thing. It was like,
I was a little
holy
scared.
shit. I was terrified. And I was like, and I kept trying. And I was like, I was now going to school at NYU while I worked full time. I was doing like night classes and I was meeting people now. I was meeting people and they would have a drink after school and whatever. And I really was like, I don't see, I think that was a phase. I think if you had gone through what I went through, and I really believed this, I'm not going to I have a very different take on looking back on the choices I made. I was an alcoholic. There's no freaking doubt about it. But at the time, I really didn't know. In my mid 20s, it's like I may have just needed a lot of pain medication because it was fucked up what was going on. Now I'm here, I'm doing well. And the funny thing is, I talked to, you know, three people, and one person said, what do you think you're going to have a beer and blow up? I mean, what's the big deal? And this other person said, well, I mean, you go to a wedding and have a sip of champagne. I mean, right? Of course I can. Of course I can have a sip of champagne. And then my other friend who was still in the program, 12-step program, was like, I don't know, like few people that have done that and they haven't necessarily come back, but I wish you all the best. And she actually told me later that she was like, she for a while was questioning, like, should I be doing this program or should I go? She stayed. I didn't stay. So yeah, it was like, so I had a 3-year dry period. And I just say dry in that I really wasn't sure what to do with myself. I wasn't drinking yet, but I also wasn't involved in anything that was identifying that I would have any kind of problem. So I felt kind of scared. I would hang out with people after classes, but I was like, I don't know. And then it was like all of it, I just was like, I think I'm going to do this. And I had a big jug of this Frisianais, like this sparkly wine stuff. And two friends had come to visit from Seattle. And I made them a really nice dinner. We had sightseed all day and went sightseeing, and I made them a really nice dinner. They were exhausted. They fell asleep, and I sat with that Magnum in my lap, and I felt like I could breathe for the first time in like 5 years. So I really, that was my experience. I felt like I'd been holding my breath, and the drinking was on. And what's really a remarkable thing is I would spend the next 2 years drinking my ass off in New York. But I lived in Hell's Kitchen and I stepped over crack vials and I mean, crackheads would be sitting on my stoop when I would go to leave for work. How I didn't pick up a crack pipe, I would see crack pipes on the ground. I was stepping over this. I mean, it really was in my face. I could have had access to it so easily. And I'm not saying I still was drink, now I'm drinking again, but the fact that I didn't pick that up again because it was right there. I used to have to really go through a lot to get it when I lived in Seattle. I had to like, put myself in extremely dangerous situations, and I was put in extremely dangerous situations to get crack because I didn't know anybody in my life that smoked crack. It was through this guy, and it was always, he'd leave me in the car smoking cigarette after cigarette while he would go score with my money, probably smoking up most of it and come back with a little rock and go, gosh, it was so hard to find any, like, and I could have been, it'd be middle of the night in, dangerous neighborhoods. He'd have my keys and have me locked in my car, like that was my crack experience. But here I am in Hell's Kitchen, and I really could have just gone, hey, can you get me a rock? It would have been that easy. And I don't know how I didn't.
But that can be
But
tricky too, because
yeah,
I think for people that like I did a lot of cocaine over like a 6 month period when I was really young, like 19.
right.
It's funny. I was telling my daughter this the other day, who's 20, and she was just like, "You what?" And I'm
What?
like, I mean, don't do what I did, but I was like, yeah, I was like doing it a lot. And then it was bad. It became a problem very quickly for me,
Me
to the
too.
point that
Yeah.
I was like, I think I would do some bad stuff, some self-destructive behavior to get more. The soon as cocaine for me was like alcohol, I never, because it was so free flowing, I never felt like I must have more alcohol. But with cocaine, the second I started doing it, I was like, oh my God, how do I get more? How do I keep this feeling going? I already was paranoid that people were doing it without me.
Yep.
These two people are going in a bathroom. What are they doing? Are they doing coke? I want some, and I recognized very quickly that this could be a humongous problem for me. So I quit doing cocaine, did it like one more time after I swore it off, and then I really swore it off and I never did it again. And
Never
that is
did it
so
again.
tricky for your brain because for many, many years I was like, well, I don't think I'm an alcoholic because like I'm not an addictive person because look, I just quit doing cocaine, cold turkey, never did it again.
Well, there you
So
go.
like there you go. I'm not like so I that messed with my brain for many years.
Yeah, I didn't really, if for me, when I realized I smoke crack the way some people drink, it really, then you go, it's really kind of all the same, like I'm not, I get it now because it's like I would have done anything. From the very first time I tried it, I went to the cash machine and I bled out my account. The very first night I did it. In the middle of the night, again, in horrible neighborhoods, going to cash machines until every dollar I could get, every single time I did it.
So
And
you're probably told yourself like I've never done that with alcohol.
I've
I've never
never, I
gone to
hadn't
the ATM and bled my account
exactly
to buy wine. So what's the
when
harm?
I went into treatment the first time I had just turned 21. I hadn't even had a legal drink, you know? So in my head, that fed my, belief that that was a phase and that was a tough time for me. Brother and dad died in that period. I just needed to get out of Seattle. This is a whole new world. New York is a whole new world. This is a whole new life. It's going to be different, and I really believed it would be until it wasn't. And it's really interesting because the time I got sober or decided that I might have a problem, it was the same kind of, it was a slow ramp of little odd spooky things that started to happen. So now I'm going to be 28 years old and I've been doing this drinking thing for a couple of years and I'm not having a party, I'm drinking alone. I'm getting a lot of booze on Friday. And this, of course, dates me as well. I'd go to Blockbuster and get 4 videos for the weekend because that was the price break. And I'd get my booze and I'd go up my 4 flights and my walk up and I would stay there and I would drunk dial Seattle. And that was my life until I went back to work on Monday. It was like I wasn't doing any great things. I wasn't, it was life. There was no life in my life. And I was,
Do you feel like
now
you
I'm
knew
getting
that?
older. Yeah, I feel like I heard myself say this earlier today that I really by the time that I knew that alcohol was a problem, I had gotten so I was that victim that didn't know she was a victim. I was so mad at I was now starting to I think all the stuff that had happened 10 years prior was catching up with me because I literally did leave the state thinking it would leave the agony of all that behind and it just went with me. And I started to have, a lot of delayed confusing feelings. Lots of stuff that I hated. I don't like feeling lots of feelings. I don't like crying. I didn't want any of that. Um, and I couldn't keep it down and I couldn't drink enough. One of the last drinks I had was because I stopped drinking January 3rd. That Christmas Eve prior to that, I remember I actually had a 3-pack of vodka that I had bought for a friend for their Christmas gift that I was going to see the next day. And I was like, fuck him. I broke into it that night and I drank. And I felt like I couldn't drink to not feel like I was so angry it wasn't working. And I didn't even like the taste of alcohol. I really just wanted the effect. Hit me hard like the cocaine did. Let's just get it down. I don't care what it is. This was happened to be a lovely set of Absolute. It was like, didn't matter. It's like, I just wanted I was really angry. I remember I was just really angry and bitter. I couldn't kill it. And I was like, what's happening to me? Like, what's it going to take? What's happening? And when I woke up on the 3rd of January, I had a series of really weird things. My very last night of drinking was at a place in New York called Show World, which is beyond a titty bar. Beyond.
I love this story. Tell me this
I
one.
will tell
Tell me
you this
this
story.
one.
Okay, so an acting partner that I was very attracted to said, "Hey, you want to get together?" And this was on January 2nd. Sure, let's go have dinner and then so we go to dinner and during dinner, it's one of my favorite little Mexican restaurants. He goes, "Have you ever been to Show World?" And I'm like, "No." And it was like 6 blocks from where I lived and we were right in my neighborhood. I'm like, "No, I haven't. I've always, and by then I'm already a little drunk on tequila." And he goes, "You want to go?" And I want to be with him, so I want to say yes. And he goes, "All right, I'm going to go take a piss. I'll be right back." He goes to the bathroom. I go to run to the bar and say, "Please give me a triple shot right now." Like, it's like, I'm going to need courage because I'm not drunk enough for this. So he gives it to me. I take it, I get back to the table. And then as we're walking to Show World, I slipped and fell on my ass really hard. It was not good, but I got up and I'm good. I'm good. Let's go. We walk in, it is an environment like I really I'd never been in anything like this. I'd seen titty bar stuff on TV maybe or in movies, but I had never, this was beyond. It's like you walk in and it is literally, it's so overstimulating. There's so much going on in every corner and there are a lot of tough guys standing around, but there's also just like, it's an amusement park, I guess, for sex addicts. I don't know, whatever you want to call it. Um, and I was overwhelmed. And he's like, "Let's go upstairs and see a show." And I kid you not, we're walking upstairs and I see, I guess one of the acts had just finished, a famous stripper. They do the tours. And long before Stormy Daniels. And there's this gal at the very top, and there's one guy on one side of her and one guy on the other, and they're holding her legs open. Her crotch is right in my face, and they're putting a dildo in her. I'm not kidding. And taking pictures. They're getting their picture taken. This is the kind of, like you go to an amusement park and they take your picture on
With
a
the
Ferris.
characters with like Daffy
Right.
Duck.
Yeah, exactly. This is that. This is that. So it's Kodak, whatever, Polaroid pictures, right? But they're taken. This is your takeaway that you saw this stripper and you get to stick something in her and get your picture. That is what we're walking up and I'm like, holy shit, what's happening, right? But again, I like him and he's like, he's having a good time. So we go up and I again see lots of stuff and he goes, "You know what? We should make adult movies together." And I'm like, "Excuse me? No, like we should direct them. We should direct movies together. That would be awesome." And I'm like, I don't know what's happening, but I am There's no words.
Are you
And
wondering at this
show,
point what you're giving off that's making him like
oh,
are you like,
I
okay, I'm
know.
playing it really cool, so
Yes.
does he think like, oh, she's a pro, like she's cool with this, like
Yes. And even if I wasn't, I wanted him to think that. I think I still really wanted him to think that because I had so lost sight of what I was even doing in New York and what was even happening. And this was my attempt. It was difficult to find people to go out with and date, whether you're sober or not sober. And this was an acting partner that I'd had great acting scenes with. He's very talented. We'd had a lot of fun, but this was a whole other side of him. And I was at the end of my drinking, although I didn't know it. I did not know this would be my last night drinking,
was there
but
any
it's,
part of you that was like, I mean, maybe I could make movies with this guy? Was
I
there,
think I told him that, but here's the sobering thing that happened in
yeah.
all the midst of this. Showworld is famous for these booths, and we go into a couple of different booths. And the first one, I started to sober up. The first one I noticed, you pay money and you put coins in a slot and the thing comes up and there's a girl and she'll do whatever. The first girl I noticed is super petite and whatever, but she has stretch marks all over her body. And in my head, I remember thinking, oh my God, only reason you'd have that on your belly is because you have kids. So that started to sober me up. I didn't say anything to him, but I'm like, fuck, like reality started to sink in. The second one we went into was a extremely young girl. She still had braces. And that was like, and he goes, we should get her. And I'm like, and we should see if we can get her number. So that's wrapping it up. From there, we ended up going to a bar. We drank a little bit more. We said farewell. There was nothing more than that. He was looking for a business partner and I was looking for a boyfriend. Um, he went home. I went upstairs. I was drunk again because I think my last few drinks were Amstel Light and a Sea Breeze. Never those when I drank at the club. I go home. It was a rough night. When I woke up the next morning, it was January 3rd, and I had those Show World coins, which have a mud flap girl on one side, and those are the coins you use, and they were all over my desk. And it was like all of a sudden, everything was like, wow, this is my fucking life. This is my life. And I was like, my mom would be so proud of me. It's like, who am I going to tell this story to? Like it's funny in an AA meeting, maybe, or a 12-step meeting. You cut that out. It's not really funny. It's like um, it's powerful though. I'm very grateful for it. I mean, I really am. I'm really grateful for it because that's really not, I really don't want to sign off on that stuff. And this is 1992, 93, very beginning of 93. It was a long time ago, and at that time, all kinds of bad and shady things were happening to young women that we were, that's all the front pop stars were getting asked horrible questions, all those kinds of things that we look back at now and go, I can't believe that we did all that. But for me, it was just, it was real humbling, like I wasn't super proud of it. And I am not rigid about stuff. And I am not like, do your thing, whatever, like if you want to go to showroom, I don't care, like I am not judging anybody for what sex workers, none of that. But my experience of that night was this isn't for you. This isn't
It's
for
just
you.
that feeling of this is where alcohol takes me. I mean,
This
I
is where it
feel
takes.
like anybody who's listening to this who's sober, as opposed to sober curious or just likes to hear sordid stories. But if you're sober, you've probably had a moment, and it doesn't have to involve being at a strip bar. Like it could involve, like for me, drinking and driving. Even though
Yes.
I'd done it before, something about that time, something where you go, oh, this is my life. This is where alcohol takes me to these kind of
Yeah.
decisions, to whatever it is that's beneath my moral compass that I got to make a change.
Yeah. And I think I don't know that the truth is when you kind of go back and we talked about the childhood, I don't even really know. I was around a lot. I was exposed to a lot of things as a kid that were very grown up. My brother worked on porn magazines, and my parents had those magazines because they were proud of him. So I saw those magazines as a kid. It's like I had been exposed to, I think that's why part of me was sort of like, am I cool enough to do this? But at the same time, it's like, this isn't what I want for myself. This isn't really me. And what I really wanted out of that date was a boyfriend. I really did. I didn't want all that stuff. So it was just enough to go all of that and then seeing everything I did. And then also when I woke up on the third, I remember my thought to myself was maybe it's the alcohol. That was, I remember going, my life is so fucked up. I don't like this. Don't want this. Want this. Maybe it's the alcohol. And it's amazing the stuff that happened over the next few weeks that it would end up getting me. I got into treatment again and I got help again. And
How did you
I'm
get into
grateful that
treatment? Did you call mom?
I actually, my mom did pay for me to go both times. The first time it was expensive. The second time I just needed $200 for a copay. So it was through my I actually the how it started is I was working. I had a great job at a really good university. And I went to they had an employee assistance program and I went to them and I don't even know if I remember this woman was very kind and she sent me to this place that turns out was a really great place in New York. It was in Union Square, and they helped all kinds of people. They helped people with eating disorders, alcohol, therapy. Like, let's see what's wrong. Let's see what's going on. And so it was through the assessment that, of course, it would be, you're not here to get help because you went to a titty bar. You might have an alcohol problem, right? So, I ended up getting the option to do this, and it was a 2-year program. So this was an outpatient program, and I did do it for 2 years. I went 3 nights a week, and I started. It was like just a very different experience. Of whew, it was time to really basically learn how to feel without having to run or do drugs or alcohol or men. Uh, and a lot of support, a lot of foundation underneath me to learn that, learn how to do that. And, all of it was really helpful. The groups were really helpful. I remember I got essentially kicked out after 2 years and I showed up, I showed up for group one night and she goes, I think this is going to be your last night. I think you're good. I think, and I remember being a little sad, but also like, you're good. You're doing good. I'd, I'd life was different at 30. It had 2 years under me at that point, and I was having a new experience of being there was a lot about emotional maturity, and they talk about emotional sobriety and all of that I was starting to learn. That I was tired of my just feeling like when you feel like you're a victim with everything, and that somehow everybody else is at fault, and if you hadn't have done this and you had, all that kind of stuff. And, it just said that my whole recovery in the last 30 plus years has involved so much healing and so much looking at so much through a lot of tools, a lot of good tools, therapy and, writing and, just a lot of digging, a lot of digging, a lot of letting go, a lot of, being able to and also finding so much good shit, so much joy, so much fun, so much I don't know, the resilience is pretty astounding. I'm really grateful because there is no reason why when in particular, which I didn't go into great detail, but those crack years, I could have died so many times. I was literally seconds and inches from stabbings, from shootouts, like it, no joke. It was like a really tough environment, a really rough environment. I had people come up to me and go, "What the fuck are you doing in this bar? Like you do not belong here." And
So
I'm still here.
when you started on your path, let's just say, and
Mhm.
you're going to your groups and I mean, did you make some sober friends? I think it's so important. Like I know that
I did.
because now you're 30 did you, and you're still at your job at this point?
Yeah, I am.
Like for me, and I think a lot of people can just relate to this in general, you know, I had this group of friends when I got sober that drank. I mean, or people that I met, for me, I had young kids. So I was hanging out with a lot of moms and a lot of people drank. And I was so grateful for like my meetings and my friends that I met that were sober because I could at least go like, okay, I'm not crazy. Because you start to feel like you're on the outside. And I'm wondering if like you're living in New York and I'm sure you have friends that like to party, the same friends that you met. So
Oh, yeah,
was it important to find community with people that didn't drink?
very much. And I will tell you that the two key things that happened that first month in January, one is that one of the women that I worked with, I'd never talked about being having any issues or whatever. For some reason, I came back from the holidays. We always had like a 2 week break. So it was a university. So they always like big break. And what did I do on my break? I hit a bottom and got, into sobriety again. So we were talking, and this is a woman that is like kind of like a big sister energy. I loved her so much. She was such a cool chick. It was like, when I get older, I want to be like her. She was like a gray haired Doc Martin Levi, cute body. Like, I want to be like her when I thought she was old, maybe 50s at her at the time. I don't look like that. I want to be like that in 20 years, right? But I'm sitting there talking to her, and I'm like, I don't know. I decided I need to stop drinking, like I end up telling her, and she's like, oh, that's awesome, and I go, but I don't know if I want to do the whole 12-step thing again, like, I don't know. I think I'm gonna just, she goes, I think maybe, like, she was so sweet and gentle about it. I had no idea at this point anything yet. She ends up telling me that she's been in the program for friends and families of alcoholics. She's been in it for years. I had no idea about that. I'd worked with this woman for some time, and she was always like such a love bug to me. No idea. And she just very gently, she's like, you might want to check it out. I mean, you might meet some people, but she was just perfect about it. Not you should. She was really perfect about it. The next day she comes in, I'd never seen one, with a 12-step program that looked like a phone book. It looked like a phone book for the New York area, and her husband, who'd been sober for years, because these were people older than me. They he had highlighted every meeting near where we worked, every meeting near where I lived, and meetings that he went to, and said, if you want to go, I'd be happy to go with you. He'd never even fucking met me.
Wow.
So that was huge. And the second thing is, I had ridden the bus, a crosstown bus, every day with this. I always would sit with the same gal, same thing, sweet as could be. We talked about everything for the last few years. I see her on a weekend. I'm like maybe 10 days without a drink. I see her on a weekend on a totally different bus. Oh my God, how are you? It's always weird to see someone out of context when you always see them in the same way, right? How are you? So I go and I said, she says, how are you? And I don't know why. I said, I told her I quit drinking. She goes, oh my gosh. She goes, I am celebrating my 13 years, and I'm going to take a cake on Monday at my meeting. It was a block from my house, not even a block, half a block from where I lived. And she's like, come to the meeting and come give me a cake. I mean, seriously, that's why I say spooky. Those two things combined were game changers for me. And so I did start going. I'd go a couple of times a week. And I met a girl. She goes, what other meetings do you go to? And I'm like, oh, I just come to this one on the weekend. And she's like, you're not doing 90 and 90? And I'm like, no. And she's like, huh. And I felt competitive and weird with her. And I'm like, fuck you. I'm not doing 90 and 90. Well, what other meetings do you go to? And then I was like, all right. So I started, and I did. I really ended up going every day for a while there. It was really great. I found meetings right by where I worked, thanks to my friend's husband. And I went every day. They had a lunch meeting at noon. It was half a block from where I worked, and I could eat my lunch and get a meeting in. And it was really helpful for me because I hadn't made friends in New York. I didn't have anyone other than the school people. And I was now, let's see, I got quit drinking in January. So by that summer, a lot of people in New York leave in the summer and to go either they go to the Hamptons, whatever. But Central Park is amazing. And I used to go to this meeting at the Y that was right by the park. And a whole bunch of us would go in and I mean, I remember that those summers, those first couple years, I saw Al Green, I saw the B-52s. There's free concerts in Central Park. And it's like, and roller skating, the roller skaters. And like, I started to like see color and but trust me, those first few meetings when people would invite me, I'd be like, I just wanted to get back to my apartment by myself because I'd been living that way for so long. And I was like, everything in me was like, no, and I want to. And then it started with like, I'll go have coffee with these people because they'd always go have coffee or go have breakfast or something after the meetings. And it started with that. And little by little, I was terrified. I was just so terrified. But by repetition, seeing them again, whether it was that weekend crew by the Y or the weekday crew down by work, I made friends, really cool friends. And, you know,
So would you be game to, because I have recorded a whole episode with your husband, I would love to like break this into two.
yeah,
Stop right here. First
yeah.
of all, tell us where to find you. Instagram, you're writing a book. I do classes. A lot of people maybe that listen to this might know that I teach memoir classes, and you've written a lot of this story. It's so beautiful. Because and you don't isn't your Instagram Mia's writing a book, right?
Yeah, it's actually, yeah, it's Mia Alicia Idrissi writing a book. I'll probably have to put it somewhere. It's really long. And I also have,
I'll put it in the description of the show. You can go look for
okay.
her.
And I do have Mia's writing a memoir.com. Some of my writing is on I have a little blog that I have got some of my stories on, so you can see them there.
Okay,
So I'll
perfect.
give you that too. I'll actually send them. It's actually in the Instagram. So
I will put all of this in the show description. So please go find Mia and then also come back because I'm going to do a little part two. So we're going to hear about sober marriage, sober dating.
yes,
I think it's really important for
I have
people
some
that go
really good
like,
stories. Yeah.
okay, so come
Yeah, the
back.
second half. I will.
Okay,
You tell
okay.
me when.
Feeling like